I wanted to just talk about my first time entertaining angels, or let me say, the first time that I knew. Girl, my screen is so, I don't even know what's going on with it. All right. So, the first time I knew that I was entertaining angels, because I really believe that I've entertained angels all my life. But this particular time was one that I still remember. It stands out to me because when I tell you, you'll understand. So I was having my second baby, and I they let me labor for 20. Okay. They let me labor for 20, I think it was 27. I don't remember because I labor with one of my children. I labor for 25 hours. The other one I labor for 27 hours. And I don't remember which one because it's been a long time now. So, but suffice it to say, a long time they made me labor. And then I ended up getting a C-section because, for those of you that know about childbirth and all that, I didn't dilate. In all of those 20 something hours, I only dilated to five. Five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are supposed to dilate to 10 to be able to get these babies' heads out of you. So that was not my case. I did not do that. So after all of those hours of laboring, they cut those babies out of me. And the second one was the same as the first. And so um, with him, though, he fought so hard. And what I could tell was that every time I would have a contraction to push him down, he would fight to go back up. So this process lasted for all of those hours. And then they finally, took him out and he was good. But mama was tired. I was burnt, stressed. My body reacted in a whole different kind of way. Like my stomach actually um, swole back out to the size that it was when I was having my baby. And it was just uncanny, and nobody knew what to do. The doctor had no idea. He said he had never seen anything like this before. And so this is my journey. I was 22 years old at the time. And so I was going to church. My grandmother was my pastor at the time as well. And so we had a lady come through, and she was an intercessor. I'll never forget it. She actually was able to go in inside my body and connect and see what was the problem. And so the way she described it was that I had had so many adhesions down there that if the baby tried to come out, he would have got cut up, just cut up. He wouldn't have been able to come through because adhesions, they look like a lattice. If I could describe it, it's like, one hand interlacing the other one. And so him trying to come out, it would have just, so he couldn't. And his spirit knew that. And so what it did was it wrecked my organs. So like my lungs started shutting down and um yeah, and I could go on and on about all the different little things that started happening, but suffice it to say that they had your girl on oxygen. My lungs function capacity was down. They had an NG tube in me. So, I mean, really, I was a sick girl. So sick that the doctor called my now ex-husband to tell him that he needed to come home and get his baby because his wife was dying. Dying. That's what the doctor said. Never forget it. Because I was sitting there when he said it. He called him in my room. So, I mean, the Red Cross anyway, because he was out here where I am now in Washington State. I was in Georgia having our baby. A lot of things were going on. A lot of things were going on. And when I look back on it energetically, it was such a crazy time. It was such a crazy time. I'm grateful to still be sitting here telling the story, but the angels. So as I started going through, like, I ended up being in the hospital for 2 weeks after I had the baby. And the baby, my son, ended up going home with my grandparents because they were the ones that could take him, because everybody else, my mom was still working. Um, and most of the people that there wasn't anybody that could take him. My in-laws, they smoked so much I really didn't want them to take him, to be honest with you. I just didn't want my child to be around all that smoke because they were smoking in the house or, I didn't want that. So my grandparents took him, which in itself is a miracle when you think about it. When you think about it, my grandparents, so my son's great grandparents, took him for 8 days while I was recovering. Actually, so many thought that I would not recover, that I was going to, be under the dirt. And to be honest with you, I did not know at the time because they had me so drugged up. I was on so much um Demerol. God, and I remember that they gave it to me and I didn't even ask for it. They just wanted to keep me comfortable. And thinking about it now, I realized that, that was kindness on their part. They were trying to keep me comfortable because most of the time, you got to ask for pain medicine. I don't remember ever asking, but I remember them coming and giving it to me. Now, the other part to that story is my mother also worked at that hospital for years. So, and she worked on the other side of that floor. So all the people knew her. So that was one of the good things, I suppose, about that experience. But the angels. So I'm in there, quite a few days, dealing with all the stuff. I hadn't eaten. I didn't eat for 2 weeks, y'all. 2 weeks. They had an NG tube down my nose. Couldn't eat for 2 weeks. So essentially, and I think about it now, essentially I was on a fast. Um, no eating, no drinking. Whoo, y'all, the bees out here are just insane and I don't understand them and they need to go. Get on, go where you need to go. But anyway, so, no eating. My baby was gone after 6 days. They discharged him because he was fine. He was fine. He was a tough little thing. And so he was fine. And so they discharged him with my grandparents. So my grandparents had him. And, I felt comfortable with that because, they basically raised me. And so they had me when I was a baby. So I felt real comfortable with that. And plus, they were, if you know me, you know that they are and were my people. So anyway, they took him home and I was in the bed and usually somebody stayed with me pretty much every night. But I think there were 2 nights that nobody stayed. And and I know why, because my grandmother was the one that mostly stayed. And so since she had the baby, she couldn't stay. But, different other people would come and stay. I think one of my aunts stayed one night and, my mother stayed and my sister stayed, but she was a little girl. But different people stayed with me. But this particular night, nobody stayed. And I would advise if you are in the hospital or you know somebody in the hospital that you have somebody that can stay with you because you need that, especially now. Now, this was over 30 years ago, so it's a little different, but not so much. You still needed somebody that can advocate for you, especially if you were in a situation where you can't advocate for yourself. Okay, so that's not what I was talking about. So the angels. So I had these, I always had a connection to God and Jesus. I mean, I've always had this huge connection, and I've known this since I was a child. I used to see all kinds of things. They would show me stuff. Um, the dead people thing, I used to see, could see the people when they died. I would see them in the casket, and whatever they had on is what I would what I would see. So whatever they wore when they were buried, I would go to the funeral usually afterwards and see this as well. And this was something that they showed me before. Sometimes it would be, in cases where the people didn't know they were going to die. Like, I don't know. I was a little girl. I didn't have all the answers, but I know what I saw. So, with the angels, I really wasn't even surprised. So I was in bed and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember because I had called the nurse had come in. And I remember this so clearly. She came in and she turned on all the freaking lights at 2 o'clock in the morning to check all I think I had an IV at the time. So they checked the IV and checked the tube and all the stuff, but I think she forgot that, people sleep in the dark and I'm a dark sleeping person. I don't, I'm not a person that sleeps with lights. I can, now, but I was always a dark sleeping person. Like I always was a person that loved blackout curtains. You know what I mean? Because I like to sleep in the dark. So anyway, this bitch comes and she flips the lights on and looks at all the stuff and wakes me up. I'm sleeping good. And so of course I wake up and finishes whatever she's doing. She goes out. She actually leaves the fucking light on still. So I put on my button and asked them to come and turn the light off and if I could get a sleeping pill. Well, I didn't know that it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And, typically they don't give sleeping pills after 2. That's a fun fact. Now, they may have changed that since I worked in the hospital, but we didn't used to give, if you asked for a sleeping pill after 2, we were not supposed to give it. Now, if the person had trouble sleeping and I knew they was up like that, sometimes I would kind of fudge it, just fudge the time, say I gave it a little bit earlier and give it, but everybody is not like us. They not like us. So that being said, this girl basically ignored me. Didn't even come in to tell me I couldn't get the sleeping pill or I could get it or anything. She just didn't ignore me. So then I called and said, "Hey, I got to go to the bathroom." Well, they ignored that too. Nobody ever showed up or came. But let me tell you who did come. The angels came, and it was four of them, and they all sat at each corner of my bed. So at the four corners of the bed, there were four angels. And to me, they looked like men and they had white suits on. There were no halos, no wings, nothing like that. They just looked like well dressed, well kept men. And they were men of different ethnicities, nationalities, things like that. So it wasn't even. And then there was one that I couldn't even tell what he was. I saw his hair, but I couldn't really tell, I couldn't even, give him a culture or anything. And I was okay with that because I recognized and I knew that these were angels and they came from me. And I didn't get scared or afraid. I know a lot of people, think if you see angels, coming for you, that they're the death angels and people get afraid and they think that that's, it's time for them to go and all this other kind of stuff. But, I don't honestly think that I have really ever been afraid of death. Like, I don't think I have. I really have not. I have not had that fear. And, so I know that I have had, some horrendous deaths in my past lives. I know that I have. I've felt them and I've seen some, but I just in this life I've not had like a crazy irrational fear of death and a lot of people have. So even at that time when I felt like I was facing death, because nobody knew what to do. To be honest with you, they were going to go and open me back up and see what was going on because nobody knew what to do. Listen to the words that I'm saying to you. These are the experiences that I have had. This is the pattern of my life. And I'm looking at it now because nobody knew what to do for me. There was nothing. They did all the little things. They had me on IV and I think I was on TPN, which is, a total parenteral nutrition, all of that because I wasn't eating and I had just had a baby. And so, were giving me antibiotics and, all kinds of stuff. I'm telling you, so many things. But nobody knew what we were even fighting. And so I think about it now and I know that so much of it was energetic because at the time when I had my son, my ex-husband, about a month before I was due to deliver. Matter of fact, it was almost a month exactly before I delivered, not before I was due. It was a couple of weeks because this boy was 13 days late, as was my oldest. So they were, I don't know, it must be a record. Both of them were 13 days late. You see? So it was a couple of weeks before I was due to give birth that this nigga told me that he, wanted a divorce and wanted to be with this other bitch that he was with and all this stuff. And so for me, I'm hurting. So I feel like energetically that thing hurt me so bad because, I'm 8 months pregnant. I am hormonal. This is my second child with this man. And, even though I knew things were crazy and I knew he was, who he was, I still, at 22 years old, held out hope for my relationship, for my marriage. You know what I mean? For our little family that we had built, So I still was holding up that hope. And so I know that energetically, a lot of that was at play now. But at that time, I did not realize to the extent of that. I didn't realize, how much it was at play in all of this craziness that I was dealing with inside of my body. So the angels, so they just came and y'all, they didn't say a word. That was the thing. They said nothing, but their presence it felt like a blanket was covering me and I felt safe. And so for those of you that know, I've talked about this before. You can go check out some of my videos on YouTube, and I'm the same at Intuitive Tammy on YouTube as here and TikTok. But I've talked about this before about how, I have I have felt so ashamed of so many of the things that the decisions and the things that I've done in my life as far as, with, getting married when I did and, having my kids and all the stuff. But then I realized that those are things that were just a part of my journey. And now I realize because I can help so many women that are going through that or have been through that. And even the fallout afterwards, because even though you release those relationships and stuff, there's still things that you have to deal with in here that don't leave quickly, and you really have to take some time with them. You have to take some time and release. And sometimes you have to release them more than once. So the angels. So the angels sat at the four corners of my bed, didn't say a word. I just felt the peace. I felt the calm and I felt safe, which for me it's a buzzword for me because all, I don't often feel safe. Darn it. Some kind of bug was on me, y'all. Just at the time I was saying that, I don't often feel safe in spaces, in situations, in places, in rooms. However, that is one of the things that I started to shift. So when I felt those angels in their presence, I knew that I was going to live because at that moment, I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to live. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to live. I didn't know. I didn't know. But when I saw those angels, those men that came in the room, no halos, no wings, none of that shit, just beautiful spirits. And to be honest with you, now that I think about it, they didn't all have to be men. It's just what that looked like to me in my limited scope at that time. Because that was, that was the patriarchy that was placed on us in this, that we feel like, anything that's powerful is a man, and that really is not true. But that was how I thought at that moment. And so, like I said, when I think back on it now, I don't believe that they were all men, but I just know that they were angels and their presence came to help me to move from that place. Because what happened after that is, now I told y'all I had already called the nurse, to get something for sleep, to help me to the bathroom, all these kind of things. Because to be honest with you, I think this was probably about day 8 or 9, maybe 10, because it wasn't that many days after that that I was able to go home. But up until that point, I had a catheter, and so they ignored me that I had to go to the bathroom. But I mean, there's more than one way, right? So, um, after I had that visitation with those beautiful, 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 beautiful spirits. After I had that visitation, I got up. Now, mind you, like I said, this was about day 9, and I had not been up out of the bed. Hear what I'm saying to you. I mean, I had been like on a bedside commode. There was a bedside commode by my bed if I needed to, poop or something like that. But I had not been out of bed. I had not been out of bed in about 9 days. So after I had this visitation with these beautiful spirits, these angels, I got up out that bed and I went to the bathroom. What I did too, and I didn't know at the time, which really made me know that I was in this space that they had come to give me a gift. They came to give me the gift of life, and I think about that now and I think I have to do what I'm called to do because they came to give me the gift of life because y'all, I told y'all I was dying. I was dying. They came to give me the gift of life. And so after they came, I got up out of the bed and I went to the bathroom, leaving the catheter by the side of the bed, on the side of the bed. I think I actually threw it on the side of the bed when I saw it come out, which couldn't have been pleasant, but wasn't feeling no pain at that time. And so I went to the bathroom. And then when I got back to the bed, I got in the bed. I turned the light off because the nurse, of course, like I said, had left the light on. It was just terrible. And, you know, and so got back in the bed and the nurse came in the room and she looked and the first thing she saw was that catheter laying on the side of the bed. And she said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I called you because I had to go to the bathroom." I said, "And nobody came." She said, "Oh, well, so and so was supposed to come and this and that." And I said, "Okay," but I had already done that. And she said, "Well, let me get a thing and put this back up." I said, "No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No. We are not doing that." So, yeah. So after that, it was just a few more days. Like I said, I was able to everything started working because my lungs were starting to shut down. I mean, it was a terrible situation. My stomach was swole up like I was still pregnant. It was something. But after that night, everything started to shift. My body started to respond, to even the medications. Everything started going down. Now they still didn't know what was the reason why all of this. Nobody ever. My doctor was like, "I'm not touching it." He actually told me that he felt like I had had my babies too close. And he admonished me not to have another baby in less than 2 years because he said that my body needs that time to recover, which I don't know why that made any sense at the time, but it did. And I listened because he said something else. He said, "If you have another baby within 2 years," he said, "I will personally terminate it because, it will probably either kill you, the baby, or both of y'all." And he said, "I know your mother had 4 kids and your grandmother had 10 kids." He said, "But you are not born to birth babies like that. You're not." And so I listened. And I was kinda okay with that anyway, because I wasn't wanting a whole bunch of kids no way. To be honest, I didn't want any, but, I didn't want a whole bunch of kids no way. I was good with what I had because, God blessed me with other kids to raise as well. And I think probably that was the plan. So So that was my encounter with the angels. And I think about that often because it was such a sweet experience. And the way that I felt is what I remember. So the way that I felt, the way that I felt so loved and so cared for. And I felt like I was going to live because I don't know if you know how it feels to think you're going to die. Even though I just told you, I don't really have, and I've never had. And I didn't realize that that was a superpower until here recently. But I've never had a fear of death. I've never. You know what I mean? I think I've stared death in the face 2 or 3 times, and I've never had a fear. So I wonder if that is one of the things that really saved me because I didn't have that fear, and so I could receive that the angels would come to support me. That's what I feel. So I would love to hear if you have had any angel experiences where the angels came and spoke to you or didn't speak to you, because I'm telling you, they said nothing. And the thing is, when I think about it now, I think they did say something, but it was not in a language that I could understand. So I really feel like they were imparting into me, and healing me. And this is what I felt, and I believe that these are experiences that we are supposed to have here on this planet, on this earth school. Because if nobody told you yet, earth is a school. We are in earth school. And most of this shit we already been through. Like when you have deja vu, it's because you already done that. You already done it. And this is the thing that makes me just so happy and giddy because it's like I already know what the end is. All these things that we go through, all these situations, even all this chaos that's happening in the world, you know what? I know what the end looks like. I already know the end. And you do too if you ask yourself. You already know the end. And when you already know the end, then you're comfortable with whatever. Because you know that even though this thing looks crazy and, this clown is acting like a clown and, things are happening in the planet, people being rituals are happening and people are being sacrificed and all of this kind of stuff. But you know the end. You already know the end. You know the end. That makes that should make you happy as hell. You already know. You know that all of this stuff is chaotic and it's a smoke screen and there are things happening, underneath the ground. There are things happening in the atmosphere that have nothing to do with all of the chaos that is all around us and the chaos that people want us to stay connected to. But what I'm saying is when we begin to see our angels, and now I can look and see my angels and connect to my angels. And I know, I know who I am. I know who I am on this planet and what I'm supposed to do. I know that I am a healer of healers. That is who I am. I see people healed on a level that maybe they can't see themselves. And this is the superpower that I have. And I don't know if it was directly related to the fact that I seen those angels. I don't know. But I know that it dropped a spark in me. Even and like I told y'all, that was 30, my son's 34. That was 34 years ago, almost exactly. 34 years ago in June. That spark was dropped. It's like it lit a fuse and a fire. But it also made me know that God cares for me. It also makes me know that my spirit team is always here. It's always here. And we just need to reach out. You know what I mean? We need to reach out to them and say, hey, you know, I'm here and this is what I need, or this is what I want, or this is who I am becoming. How can you help me? How can you help me? It's just as simple as that. Simple as that. So, again, if you are a lady, I'm inviting you to join me in Remember Who the Fuck You Are, my membership. Um, yeah, it's all that. $25 a month, that's it. But it's just for ladies because I really want to be able to talk to us. And to be honest with you, um, it's what I'm being called to do. And then also check out my Stan store where I have lots of resources in there, paid, some free ones. I have a mini course in there on intuition that is freaking amazing. And y'all, it's only $27. And you know what I'm thinking? I need to probably raise the price because maybe that's why y'all don't want to buy it because it's too cheap. But me trying to be considerate of people. But check that out. And then if you are looking to manifest your soulmate like I did, there is a bundle in there. It's a workbook, and it's not no super long one, y'all, because I know how y'all are. It's a little short workbook, just enough to open you up so that you're ready and able to manifest your soulmate. And then I have a meditation activation there as well for you in that stand store. All right. So I appreciate it, and make sure that you're following me on YouTube at Intuitive Tammy as well as TikTok at Intuitive Tammy. If you are a spiritual entrepreneur and you'd like to come on my show, Straight Out of Savannah, which I didn't talk about. So I have a podcast, Straight Out of Savannah. It's right here on Substack. It's also on YouTube and Spotify and all the podcast places that you can check it out. All right. And if you're a spiritual entrepreneur, a psychic, a medium, a channel, a holistic healer, or any kind of healer, a minister, or anything, you want to come on the show? Because I've interviewed numerologists, astrologers, human design experts, holistic healers, psychics, mediums, channels. So, any of those things, if you are interested in coming on my show and let's talk about it, you can reach out to me on here or any of those other platforms, wherever you feel comfortable. But you know how to find me. So, have a wonderful rest of your day, night, weekend, evening, whatever it is. And I hope you enjoyed this story about my angels. Have a great day. Bye now.